What's up everybody, George T from The Wagon. We got an old friend back to visit. If you guys watch the channel, you remember that one. This is basic tune-up gone sideways, and we are going to do all the corrective work needed on this sweet pickle here. So we're going to be yanking this motor, yanking the transmission, going through the whole front end, just trying to get this thing to work as good as it looks, because this is a beautiful car. It's a super slick car that unfortunately just has like poor craftsmanship underneath it. There's some good product down there, it's just not put together very well. So we're gonna go through, get this dude dialed in, and you guys are gonna come along with that. We got dual carbs to put on that dude, Gearbox linkage. We're gonna be pulling the gearbox out. He's got jacked up fulcrums on it. Imagine that, sitting that low. We're putting one-piece boots on it. We got a whole laundry list of stuff we're doing to that dude to get it up and going again and be a reliable vehicle for Jim. So there's his list there, long one. And I'm sure as we're doing it, we're gonna find more problems with it. So this is Jim Metzner's bug that we're working on. So first order of business, we're pulling the motor and trans completely out of it. Let's take a look at the parts that we got over here. We basically go over everything that we're doing on this vehicle. So our first order of business is when we pull that motor, we're gonna be upgrading it to a doghouse cooler. We have our adapter, our new cooler, new doghouse fan shroud, the thicker fan, and our three-piece kit that's going in there, also complete with the doghouse cooler seals. Transmission's coming out as well. When the transmission comes out, we're going to put one-piece boots on it, which will require resealing your axle tubes, and we have new axle seal kits. You also got a 6-shooter from air cooled for the clutch adjustment we're going to have on there. Next order of business is we are taking the single carb setup off of it, and we're going to go with the dual carb setup. We're running the HPMX carburetors. So we ordered the deluxe kit with the offset manifolds. This is really important when you're ordering it. Impy makes another manifold that really makes the carburetors wide. If you get these, they're basically a replica of the Delorto manifolds. These are the ones I always prefer to run on Type 1s and Type 2s. Any of them I'm doing dual carbs on, those are my manifolds of choice. We're also upgrading to a Carter fuel pump. This is a great fuel pump. I have it on every car I build. It's a 4-pound consistent pump. I never have issue with it. And as I always do on any dual carb setup, we're doing the Berg linkage on it, direct from Gene Berg. This is going to make it to where the car does not need constant maintenance. When you put the right linkage on it, it helps out tremendously. I know some people are going to scoff at the fact I'm using HPMX carburetors, but my bus has had HPMX carburetors on it since 2011. That's a long time that motor's been running on one set of carburetors that have never been taken apart, rebuilt. I've never had to adjust anything on them internally. They've been working for me pretty solid for about 10 to 12 years now. There's a little bit of the scope of work that we have going into this bug here, and it's going to be quite a big job. What's not showing on this is we're going to be going through the entire front end. I mean, this thing just has like crazy play in every direction. So we're most likely we're gonna have to check the shimming on the link pins. We're gonna have to check the thrust on the bearing. When we have all that stuff out, we're gonna repack his front bearings. And then we gotta check condition of tie rod, steering box, and all that other good stuff. So this is going to be a big job. This is probably gonna be carried over for 1 to 2 weeks, just because we're gonna be working other stuff in between it. Still have to finish spraying the engine compartment in my brother's bus, and we also got to do work on the thorns for paint work as well. This is what I would consider like a problematic engine compartment. We have a distribution block over here, and if you look at all the wiring on the motor is black. Every wire going to this engine right now is black. Absolute insanity. Oh, I'm sorry, we have one red one, and by that it's a 12 gauge for this. We're also going to do a 4 gauge positive lead on that and upgrade it to where it's going directly to the starter. And I'll figure out what I got to do for that over there. First order of business on pulling the motor, get yourself some tape. Every color is identical. We have to label each individual wire to its respective location so it goes back in the proper way. We have a crank trigger ignition on this motor. So these are the coil packs for it. So I'm gonna have to relocate these as well because they're occupying the space that will soon be occupied by the doghouse cooler. And I still want the aesthetics of the motor to look nice and clean. So I'm not 100% sure where we're gonna end up putting those, but we will be relocating that coil pack. There is a ton of little work that you don't think about when you're doing cars like this. You're doing so many changes to it for the better, but it requires so many additional little things that you have to do along the way. Everything is disconnected from the motor now. Bottom cable disconnected, fuel supply is disconnected. All our wiring has been labeled and put off to the side as you see right here. Front breastplate's been removed and all 4 bolts have been removed from the engine. So we're going to actually start to do the pulling process now. This is the mess we're dealing with right now. If you look right there, show that dude, you see how filthy that sump is right there. So sump's getting pulled, we're gonna be cleaning that off. We're gonna be removing the shroud because we're gonna be changing the oil cooler to the doghouse. We're gonna get all this stuff secured. Typical just trash work. We got the back tin, we got the 2 other pieces, and this is what I was talking about. We're gonna have to relocate these coil packs. This thing is just a mess everywhere as far as fluids go because our wheel seals are leaking on each wheel, plus our boots are leaking on both sides. This thing couldn't hold fluid if it wanted to. So this is going to get pulled out. We're going to be removing those the tubes completely off to put the 1-piece boots on it and resealing our brake kit when it goes back on. If you guys listen to my brother's podcast, he just had the guy from Benco Transmission on there, and he was talking about the caps, like the cap sizes, the actual axle seal cap that goes on. So I'm going to be miking that because we do have the aftermarket disc brakes on here that have the wider brackets, and it's a problem that I've been dealing with for a while. Every time I upgrade disc brakes, I seem to have to do wheel seals multiple times. So we're going to be miking those and just checking the accuracy of that. He's asking for a 0.5 thousandths of crush on it. So we'll see what we do there. We're adding a doghouse cooler. This is a non-doghouse case. It does not have the insert right here. So we're going to be drilling it out to a 5/8 hole, and I have the splined insert that makes it to where just a bolt coming from the backside is going to be able to hold that in place. Because once all the doghouse apparatus is here, you do not have access to that back bolt. Right now, we're going to still work on getting that transmission out of the vehicle because I want everything. So tomorrow, Ocean has a day of just taking stuff apart and cleaning. So we're going to be pulling this transaxle. In order to do such, you have 3 M12 or 19 millimeter, 3 on each that hold it to the spring plate, plus your shock bolt you got to get off. We'll be disconnecting brake lines, and we're going to be upgrading these. We're going to do the banjo fittings that I normally do. They just look a lot cleaner. We usually just drop the whole yoke off, so we're going to take the 2 27 millimeters off the front, 2 nose cone bolts, 15 millimeters. We got to disconnect the coupler underneath the seat, and we got to remove this ground strap. This will need to be unbolted as well, so it can come out. Clutch cable's already been disconnected on top, and our wiring has already been removed from the starter. This is evidence that our wheel seals are leaking. Look at this. I'm getting dripped on by the transmission as I'm underneath it with these stupid boots here. They're ghost. This thing is a mess, so the fact that we're going to be taking those off is going to be rather helpful. So I got to check condition of Fulcrums anyways, so what I'm probably going to do is, while this thing is the legs off of it, run it through my parts washer. Look how wet that is. And once we upgrade these, it's going to look a lot slicker too. We got the fuel pump back here, which is silly because the majority of fuel pumps are pushers. I'm curious if that would be a puller. When it's a pusher, that means your tank is up here. You'd be mounting the pump here so it pushes the fuel to the back. For something to be here and higher in the bung of the tank, if it's not, you're going to wear this pump out prematurely. Starting off by draining that, and we'll be putting fresh oil obviously in this as we do it. When we get this thing to flip over, once it's drained, we're going to have Ocean start removing that sump. He's got the nice CB wide glide sump on there. Unfortunately, it's just filthy. So that'll be going through our parts washer as well. This is our parts washer. This is what I'm referring to. So we got this here. It heats up the water. You put a detergent in it, and it cleans your parts off for you. Does a great job on it. One of the issues we're having with this Volkswagen is just a ton of slop in the front. And as I'm doing this on the car, I don't know how well the camera is going to be picking it up, but you can actually see the center section of the spindle. You can see the spindle moving independently from the carrier. Also, I think we have too much play in the thrust bearing, like the end that you actually put the bolt on. So we're going to address both issues. If these need to get rebuilt, I'm gonna have to send them out. Unfortunately, I don't have all the tooling to do that. So we have a lot of the same going on over here. All that movement is in the spindle. Now another thing we're gonna do here, we're gonna pull the spindles completely off, check our offset on the two trailing arms, and shim these accordingly. When I see poor craftsmanship or poor workmanship, I now have to go to the base. I have to go all the way in and make sure that that part was done properly. So the spindles will be coming completely off of this. We're going to check the play in between here, and we're also going to re-shim these with the proper shim stack to set this where it's supposed to be. At the same time, I'm feeling play in our tie rods, so I'm going to have to dig deeper in that. It's most likely steering box. It is a inherent problem in VWs. Unfortunately, the steering boxes have too much play in them because they're just overused. Even the new ones unfortunately have issues from the word get. So once we diagnose what's up with this play, our side-to-side play, we'll figure that out altogether. I pulled the drain plug on this, and I've got both axles up with my tools to have everything drain as much as possible out of this. And the reason why I did this is because this thing is leaking so bad. Like I can literally stick my fingers into that boot there, and you're showing how much fluid you're actually using to lubricate and cool your transmission, not to mention the chance of these axles ever getting oil to the bearing at the end are slim and none when first off it's this low of fluid and it's that low, meaning your axles are so high that oil cannot travel uphill. So I have barely, I'm gonna say I'm lucky if I got a quart in here already. Once we get it done, I'll show you guys inside there. It's filthy, overworked, ton of metal to transfer, all that stuff. This is all the fluid that came out of that transmission. And you can see the sheen, like that pearlescence in it. That's pretty normal for gear oil. So that's not a big deal, but it's the lack of volume here. You know, this is maybe a quart, maybe a quart and a quarter. And this has to lubricate and cool your transmission that's already being taxed by the angle of your axles, because this thing is laid out. When it's on the ground, these axles are going uphill, and that fulcrum is being taxed to its maximum, and you have minimal fluid in it. It's never a good combination. Now we're just going to check and see how much fluid. Now remember, there should be 3 quarts of gear oil in there. I'm going to pour this into this container. It's empty, and it's got measuring marks on the side there, so let's see. And there'll be obviously be some residual inside the gearbox that didn't come out, and maybe a touch of it in here, because I'm not going to sit here for 20 minutes. Wow, there's some big chunks of metal. We're going to get a shot of that now that we actually drain it out of there, and you can see it. Whoa, she's got sparkle magic going on. And if this thing has drop fulcrums, that's a 100% reason why you're going to have stuff like that. It absolutely eats them up and destroys them when you're running that low. Yeah, this looks like an arts and crafts project in here. It's got so much glitter. I'm going to show that to you guys right now. There's the majority is poured into there. I don't know how much that's going to come across on the camera, but those are some big chunks right there. I don't know what that is. Hopefully that's grease. It's not hopefully. Let's see. That's something. That's something harder than grease. But these big chunks, I mean, these are really big chunks. We'll see the condition of everything once we actually have the axles pulled off of that. I'm pretty sure we're going to be replacing fulcrums, possibly even side gears. That's our fluid level right there. So that's the 1 quart mark. So I'm going to say we got about 1 1/3 quart, because there's our 2. So that distance there to there, let's say that's about a little over 1/3. What's supposed to be this much. So you can see it's less than half of the capacity it should be running on a transmission that is being overtaxed to do it. It requires the 3 quarts to cool and lubricate everything, and we have this thing maxed out on minimal fluid. That dude is just ripped right open. Cables are loosened on the inside. Push in on your e-brake lever. I have a specially modified screwdriver. I grab it by the ball and pull it out and come over that. So now our e-brake cable is disconnected from the caliper on both sides. We got Jim's transmission pulled. We're going to come through here. We're going to remove all the brake components off of it. Old axle tubes, everything is coming off of it. We're going to look internal on this. There's a lot of metal flake in his oil when we drained it. So we're looking for any fulcrum damage at this point. Just being proactive about it. Next thing we're doing is taking the calipers off. There's 17 millimeters on the backside if you got like an MP disc brake kit or CV Performance disc brake kit. On our ends here, we got 36 millimeters. So I got my 36 millimeter socket. Take these off with our impact. Got to take the cotter pins off. I've found just standard dikes to be the best when I do it, like a lineman's plier here. They do the best at just grabbing it and yanking that sucker out of there. I do the bite, like I'll actually pinch it in that and pull it out forward that way. They're going to be 13 millimeters holding these on. And you just take these off and they're going to come off. You're going to be pulling the bearing and everything out as one. So I've mentioned that Bill had the Benko transmission guy on there on Let's Talk Doves podcast. Check it out. This is the first time I've ever taken off an axle end cap and there's been some sort of spacer in here. That was sitting basically like that. And granted, these were leaking like a sieve, so I don't know if this is corrective work or what. But I'm curious when I mic this bearing cap if there's a difference in it, and the difference is the thickness of this spacer that someone's added there. Because I've never seen one of those before. That dude right there is the spring that's supposed to be inside that seal. So that could be an indicator as to why this side was leaking. The other one did not. What I was trying to show in the time lapse was this here. That was all inside there. So something inside this seal is blown out. I mean, look how filthy this is. When you really look at this, I mean, this is literally just caked on crap that's been building up on these axles for years now. These are not new leaks. These are old leaks that have been around for a while. All right, so we're going to get our puller out. We're going to take the 6 bolts off of that, and then we're going to get the puller and yank that whole axle tube off of there. This is just a 3-arm puller. We have it on the end of the axle there, and we need to remove the 6 13 millimeters down here, and then this is going to pull the whole axle and bearing and everything off as a group while leaving the axle in place. This transmission has some weird stuff going on. There are bolts in a lot of places that would normally have studs. Like we have 5 studs with 13s on it and 1 bolt going through. I noticed the whole gear carrier is on with bolts instead of studs. The nose cone has bolts instead of studs. I've talked about it in earlier videos. There's a difference in the compression of a stud and a bolt. And I don't know how good that is, but obviously somebody did it to it. You can use an impact with this. I know it's a bit aggressive. That spacer wouldn't come off separate. If it comes off separate, take it off by itself first. Don't leave it on there. It just makes it more difficult because right now I'm pulling up the washer and the O-ring. This is probably what was stopping it. Doesn't matter how long you drain it for, a transmission will always have gear on it when you pull stuff off of it. So we're just going to do a quick visual inspection of the fulcrums. This is your little flower. This is what gives your axle tube a slick surface to move off so metal doesn't start to gall. When you're doing anything transmission, it's very dirty. So it's got drop fulcrums, but that could be just now from the pole. So I'm not going to worry about that, but obviously we're going to pull this side gear out and still inspect everything. The fulcrums are dropped, and I don't think they were dropped before. I think I just did that when we were pulling this out. When I did a little pop, it probably shot them in there. So to get into those side gears, we're going to use snap ring pliers. I do this so much I bought a really nice set of snap ring pliers for this specific job. Son of a monkey. This thing has, I've run into this problem before. That snap ring gets kind of smashed in there because it has so much outward pressure on it. It really has freaking trouble coming out of there. I'm getting it to get I'm compressing it, but it's not pulling out of the backside, like it's stuck in it. That snap ring plier gave me a little bit of a fight and we had a little freak out on the camera at the same time. But we've got these Fulcrums pulled and they're actually in excellent shape. Surprisingly, for as low as this thing is, but they are in good shape. We're gonna pull the side gear out real quick just to do our due diligence on this and make sure it's clear, cracks and whatnot. That's if it comes out. Sometimes they really fight you. This one actually came out beautifully. Awesome. Side gear. When you pull out a side gear and you're looking for damage, first obviously you're looking at wear. This actually has excellent wear on it. You're looking for any pitting inside that fulcrum pocket right there. Okay. And the main other thing you're looking for are visible cracks where that opening is. I'm assuming that's to allow gear or oil to flow through it. Usually this is the weak points of them. They will crack along there. So if you just usually wipe one direction, you're just looking to see if anything catches in a line the opposite direction. And I'm not seeing anything. Looks nice and good there. And that one looks really good too. So Fulcrum is excellent on the driver's side of the transmission. This is a standard diff in it, so it only has the 2 spider gears. We're gonna wash those parts. We got a lot of stuff we're gonna be washing on this shop. We'll probably have almost a solid day of just washing parts in this car. The end results will be worth it. If you've watched the basic tune go sideways video, and I have a lot of footage of this car underneath, it's hideous. It's absolutely disgusting. We're checking out the condition of our axles. These are just stock axles here. If it was like a sway away or something like that, you'd see this would be much thicker along here. But this stock, and if you're not a big powerhouse transmission or anything like that, you're okay with it. All right, look at that right there. Those those marks right there. So that's the power side, I would assume, like where it's pushing up against it. And you see it's just starting to pit that little area right there. The striations from the machining are gone from this area, and it actually has new ones that are kind of cross-hatching against it. Same thing on that side. So this is, when I say the power side, I mean that's the way that the motor is putting power to the wheels. These are the areas that are hitting first. You're inspecting your splines. As I was removing the rotors, I was looking at the splines. When these go bad, they're problematic. These rarely go bad. This is hardened steel. Your rotor will usually go bad before it. All right, this side was not dropped. The fulcrums were still in the proper location because I didn't do that. That was me that dropped them fulcrums on the last one. But this one is extremely tight. Like there's a problem somewhere. It's got to figure out what it is. And I can see, if you're familiar with a side gear, there's a pattern to it. And I can see that pattern worn into the actual fulcrum plate. So there's probably going to be something wrong with this side, which is now more common than not. Once the snap ring comes out, in order to get the other thrust washer off of it, I use a magnet. If it's not smashed and distorted, it usually comes right up. So it's usually a good indicator if there's a problem with it. All right, now the true revealing point. There we go. All right. Glad that was on film to catch it the first time. Look at how chewed up that is. All right. Look at that side. Look at the ends of it. This one had a lot of trouble rotating. Look how gouged up that sucker is right there. I'm gonna have to find him another axle now at this point because this can't go back in. That's just gonna wear it. Now, let's take a look at those fulcrum plates. Mind you, this is also the first time I've touched this gearbox. Look at those. Those are done. They look like they've just been chewed up. All that. Let's compare it to a good one. Do you see how smooth that face is? There's no markings on it whatsoever. So the same way you saw those power lines, or on the axle, you could see the power side of it, how it changed the striations in the metal. You can see the same thing taking place on that good fulcrum. It's worn the outer edges. You have a little bit of excessive wear in that one corner there, but the interior is really barely touched. Now let's look at a bad one. I mean, look at just how mangled up that is. It's destroyed. Look at the back side of it. When I pull that side gear out, most likely we're going to need new side gear as well. And I can tell also, because this is having a lot of trouble pulling out, that it's most likely going to be cracked. When I have this problem, they're usually, because they're cracked, it's an almost interference fit when they go in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this dude over, knock it out the other way. Ooh, I can see in there already, there's big chunks. And remember when we drained the oil out of this, how excessive the flaking was. You're looking at the cause of that right there, with that fulcrum being eaten up right there, the side gear being eaten up, the axle being eaten up. You have all these sources. Catch it right here. Wow. Usually that just pops out. That sucker's probably got a pretty big one in it. Give me that hammer over there. When in doubt, break the bigger tool out. So now I do want you to catch that. Get on this side of it to catch it when it comes out. So I don't know how well that's going to show up in the camera, but that surface is just gouged up, completely gouged up. And the next thing we're looking at is the coloring of it. See just how hot this sucker got. So you see these hot spots in it. Those are like, they're like a contact point, like a friction point in it. And I can see that there's a discoloration between those two right there. So this has been trying to break. I just don't think it's actually broken yet. We caught this rather early. I could tell when I was driving it had a problem. We also spotted a broken nose cone on the car. The symptoms are very similar. As you take off, it's a thud. So I noticed something was going on with this, but it wasn't actually broken yet. That was a broken nose cone. I'm pretty sure that side gear is roached. So I got a couple of buddies now I got to call up and see if I can get some parts from them. But I'm going to show you there's a spacer, and we need to be mindful of this and pull them out. So this is the spacer that goes behind your bearing. Okay, so when the bearing's in the axle cap, this is behind it, and the purpose of this is to allow when you tighten everything up, for it to only stay on the inner race of the bearing. The relief side goes on the interior of the axle right there where it has that curve. Then this is going to be touching the inner race. This makes contact with the inner race here and allows this axle to move independently once you have the other spacers and everything tightened up. That's why as tight as you're making this, which is usually about 250 to 300 foot-pounds of torque, it's not smashing this. Everything is riding on that inner race because of these specifically sized spacers that go in there. I'm putting the gearbox in here. We're going to take this over to Hanson's Transaxles to get the stuff fixed on it. I figured I might as well bring him a somewhat clean transmission. We'll see, possibly get it all painted in some flat black on this dude. We got the brackets in there. We got the yoke in there. This is like a dishwasher for automotive parts. It's the best. So in the transmission, we had to replace the side gears. One was destroyed, but these were the 15 tooth. So the differential got pulled and the spider gear swapped, and two 17 tooth side gears. But you can see the condition of these pieces. They're completely trashed. And this is not just from being low. This is also, this thing had broken boots on it, and it's running extremely low on fluid. This had 1 quart out of 3 that it should have had in it. So that's going to affect lubrication in these areas where they're already under tension. Now we're going to put some studs here, and that's going to be for the mid-mount. We're not going to mount the mid-mount until it actually goes into the car though, but we're going to do the prep work and put the studs there. When I did these end caps, I did use those spacers that I showed you on disassembly. We put those back into the mix. When I use my caliper, I check depth on the bearing and depth on the cap, and there was a discrepancy big time. because these plates seem to be abnormally thick. I don't know where these are from. They don't have the MP part number on them like the other ones do, so I'm not sure where these are from, but they're very thick. So that spacer is there to make sure that we get crush on that bearing. We reused them. They were in it before. These things were leaking like crazy, but it was also leaking from the O-rings, not from the seal parts. So we got new O-rings, new gaskets, and a new seal pressed into that end cap. I also blasted and painted those. Four studs in there, so they're long enough for the mid mount to go on. You can still put a washer and your hardware on it. And single, most important thing we did on this transmission, brand new one-piece boots, both sides. Now I had this done over at Hansen's Transaxle. He changed out the spider gears and side gears and also installed my axles while it was there. I figured it'd be a lot easier for him to do it. He's more proficient and trained at it than I am, and then I'm the one who puts the end caps on them and gets them ready for their brakes. I think we'll put our brakes on now, that way I can do the shimming for the calipers and everything here on the bench. It'll be a little easier than under the car. Just makes this a lot heavier to move when I go to put it back into the vehicle. We had a pre-existing condition of leaking wheel seals on this, so you can see these brake pads are saturated with gear oil. We're going to address that. I also separated this bracket from that because it's going to be a lot easier to set that spacing without the whole caliper on it, because you basically are setting that spacing right there. Got a couple things to do. Clean up the brake pads, clean up these. We're going to clean up the caliper as well. Get them both ready to go back on. This thing had very thick spacers on it. Like, these spacers are abnormally thick for the caliper spacers. Usually are thin little washers, and this thing was like double stacked with those big dogs right there. Shim stack set up there. We've got our rotor centered in between the caliper bracket. These are torqued down to 45 with red Loctite. Hopefully no movement on that. These have been scrubbed in the solvent tank. These have been cleaned in the solvent tank. We're going to grease up the pins and put them back in. Pad soaking in dishwashing soap and water. We're going to give those a good scrub and spray out. I'm actually going to see if I can order a new set of these. I don't know how soon I can get them, but I may just get a new set. But if they come clean, we'll use them again. And we got to get these two clean still. Got our pads cleaned, calipers cleaned, brackets cleaned, everything cleaned and put away. Everything is torqued in place with red Loctite. And this dude is going to be ready to stab. But we're going to save that for next week because I've got a motor to tackle. We're going to call that it for the video right now. If you're enjoying this content, you like and subscribe. And let's not forget about October 3rd through the 5th in Las Vegas, Nevada is One Crazy Weekend at the Orleans Hotel and Casino, brought to you by Let's Talk Dubs in the Wagon and the Las Vegas Volkswagen Club. We're going to have all kinds of events taking place. Friday night is our meet and greet and with a strip cruise. Saturday is a car show, and Saturday night is the world famous LTD poker run with $3,000 in cash prizes. So go to letstalkdubs.com, get your room rates, and get your registration done for the show, and we hope to see you there.